Hello again. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, Rouleur Classic type people. Excellent. Right. Well, thanks for staying along, and thanks for your attention, and all those, even the people standing at the back. Any of you on Twitter, as I indicated earlier, might well have been aware of the presence online of a guy called @IrishPeloton, who is a kind of universally acknowledged resource for cycling data and quirky, interesting facts about cycling. In fact, he does it better than anybody else. And he and I, together with a few other extremely talented people, and my colleague Jonathan Marks, about this time last year, hit upon an idea, basically, to create for cycling a book that has been itching to happen for probably a generation. In fact, I know people in publishing who have tried and thought about this and have severally been scared off actually trying to attempt it. This book exists in other sports, I should say, most notably in football. There's a book called The Rothmans, as it used to be called. I think it's now called the Sky Sports kind of yearbook. But most famously and historically, there's a book for cricket lovers that has existed for about 520 years called Wisden. And it documents an entire cricket calendar. Now, we looked at Wisden and we thought, why hasn't somebody done that with cycling, which is a sport that so obviously lends itself to the same treatment? We'll talk about exactly what the treatment is in a little while or two, but I'm very proud to say, as I said earlier, it's just literally come back from the printers because the racing season only just finished a couple of weeks ago, and then we hit print and send. And this morning it arrived in boxes, and we unpacked it, and I looked at this thing that we've jointly been creating over the last year, and I was blown away and felt very proud about it. And none of it would have been possible without the hard work of the extraordinary Irish peloton, otherwise known as Cillian Kelly. And I'm going to invite him onto the stage now to introduce to you the road book. Cillian. Cheers, thank you very much. And that's it. It's, in a word, quite heavy, right?
Yeah, you could do a bit of damage.
It's about 2 kilos, which is fortunate in one respect, because I'm told that if it had weighed a couple of grams more, it would have cost about another £10 in packaging posting or something. So we just come in under that. But it's how many pages, Cillian?
It's just short of 900.
900.
Yeah.
What I could probably do is actually, just while we're talking, maybe just pass that around if people want to have a look. I do want it back, though, if that's all right. Just pass it around so people can have a little look at it. Cillian, so you and I kind of, we've known each other for sort of online for quite a while, and I think we met for the first time 6 or 7 years ago over in Dublin, but we've kind of stayed in touch down the years. And when I was approached about this idea, I said, there's probably only one person on the planet
Stupid enough.
who could make it happen. And we picked on you, unfortunately, and you've bought into it. Can you describe the scale of the task that you've undertaken?
Yeah, there's a lot of races. There's an amazing amount of races, kind of more than you would think, and I had to find a way, an efficient way, to gather all of the data for all of the races for men and women. It's not just the World Tour, it's down as far as the kind of the .1 level, which I think most people would consider to be professional races. And to gather all that together and to mush it up in some ways and publish it. And on top of that then, to produce some statistics based on that data. And yeah, it was no small task. There's other bits and pieces in there as well, not just results. So it was gathering a lot of data from a lot of different places and somehow making it into a kind of a coherent, cohesive thing.
I mean, one of the first discussions we had was, and you alluded to it just now, is what's a bike race? What actually counts? Because I say the racing calendar has come to an end. That's not strictly speaking true, is it? Because the racing kind of dribbles on in some form around the world indefinitely. But at some point, you have to kind of draw a line, don't you? And just describe again, for those of the people who don't understand the full kind of structure of UCI racing, where the parameters lie and where we've drawn the line.
Okay, so there's the UCI World Tour for men and women. I can't even remember how many races are in each one now. In the men's, it's 37. In the women's, there's a bit less. And so that's the top tier, is World Tour. And then right underneath that, they have the kind of the special category races. And then underneath that, then there are the point one races, of which there are hundreds dotted all around the world. And yeah, I think that's based more or less where people generally draw the line when they're gathering these types of statistics about what a win is. Anything under that isn't really counted. Yeah. And that's where we drew the line, I guess. Yeah.
So within the book, do we treat every, I don't know why I'm asking, I kind of know the answer to this, but for the benefit, but we don't treat every race equally, because that would be kind of insane as well.
Yeah, so the World Tour gets the special treatment. So for every World Tour race, both men and women, there's little race synopsis of the day's racing, and there's weather actually for every single race, the day's weather. But for the World Tour level races, then there's who was in the breakaway and who won the intermediate sprint points. Actually, I've got a little. So that's an example of a race, which is Tirreno Adriatico, which is the summary, the result, the standings, little stage profile, which is just for the World Tour races. So
the stage profiles, you can see just sort of top right-hand corner there. I know this kind of firsthand from being a television commentator. I go to a bike race, whether it's the Tour of Britain, the Tour de Yorkshire, or the Dubai Tour, or the Tour de France, and every single kind of race organizer has a different way of making a profile look. So you had to sort of amalgamate those and give it a homogeneous kind of feel, so they all look roughly the same, for example.
Yes.
Not roughly the same, but they have the same parameters, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and even I suppose this is the kind of the challenge that we were facing was you do get different types of data from everywhere, and in order to normalize that data to produce something that's the same is quite difficult. For instance, the Tour de France ASO, when they produce stage profiles, they actually shorten them and lengthen them depending on the distance. So if it's a 65-kilometer stage like we had last year, it's this size. If it's 200 kilometers, it's this size. Other races don't do that.
Scrunch it all up, or
they have it more standard. Yeah. And so we had to do that. Well, actually, I didn't do that.
Your mum did that.
My mum did that. She didn't just do it as a favor because she's my mum. She's a graphic designer.
Yeah, I mean, it does. It does look beautiful. The wind direction, the temperature, kind of tells you a bit of the story. It's not going to tell you the whole story, but it does remind you of particularly extreme kind of weather events which happen on cycling, and that's kind of that's really important.
And I had to be a little bit careful about all of this as well, because even with the weather, you kind of think, oh yeah, the day's weather was the day's weather. I came up with a way of gathering this weather data automatically, but for some races, they start in one place and they end 250 kilometers away. What weather do you choose? And so there is a bit of subjectivity involved in what weather I did choose for each one. So
well, another good case in point where you have to this isn't just a raw data collection and reproduction kind of experiment, because the formation. So there we go. The breakaway of the day. What stage is this stage? I can't remember. Dario Cataldo is in the breakaway. Oh, it's the one that
stage 5.
This actually finished, didn't it? I see. This is precisely the point. You've picked a stage at random, and I was at this race, and I've suddenly remembered it. It went Filotrano. Adam Yates won the stage.
Yeah.
And it finished Filotrano as the hometown of Michele Scarponi. And the whole of the little town was bedecked in kind of Astana blue. And I remember that because Cataldo was in the breakaway that day, and the rest of the break, the other 4 riders, let him go clear because it went round Filotrano on a circuit. So, but that was actually quite a clear-cut breakaway on that particular day. But it's not always the case where there's an obvious breakaway. No. Sometimes you have multiple breakaways.
Yeah, and that's the subjectivity in that as well about what is a breakaway. And sometimes you get 20 riders up the road, and then one of them is only there to gather sprint points, and he drops back. Was he in the breakaway? Not really, but kind of. And then the break moves from 20 riders to 5 riders, and then down to 2 at the end. So there's a bit of subjectivity involved in that as well. I'm sure some people mightn't agree with the breakaways that are there, but that's so be it.
Yeah.
And it was a task to gather the composition of those breakaways. I should say, I did a lot of this automatically.
Well, the other thing that probably worth noting about you is that the reason that only one person in the world could have done this job is not only can Cillian kind of like editorialize and has a passion for data collection in cycling, you also happen to be a software engineer.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is kind of like, that's been absolutely central to how you've approached this book.
Yeah, so there was a lot of the data that is collected I was able to do automatically, and I tried to do it for breakaways. Ultimately, the way in which I tried to do that was parsing race reports of how they're written, and there's a certain way in which race reports are written that you can kind of predict where the breakaway is listed. You know, they kind of start off, here's who won the stage, here's kind of a little synopsis of what happened, and then they start again and go, okay, now at the start of the stage, these guys broke away, and then there's a longer synopsis.
The third paragraph, that's where it happens.
Exactly, third paragraph. Yeah. So you look for that, you look for brackets, because there's always the team name after the rider, and so I tried to parse it. Kind of worked, but again, there's an element of, there's false positives and false negatives, so I had to go through each one manually.
Yeah.
I didn't have to go through everything manually, but certainly the breakaways needed that treatment, definitely, yeah.
It's worth stressing as well that with World Tour races, I don't know if you can show the editorial content that we've got as well. Yeah, so there's I think I wrote those, didn't I?
Yep.
Yeah, I think I did. So there's a paragraph or two that pick out, often from quite, there's a range of contributors there, all of whom I think, or most of whom were actually at the race and can remember in more detail, and often they pick out kind of particular elements or details in that day's racing that maybe slip through the general news reporting net. So there's a nice personal touch to that editorial content as well. On the content.
Great contributors as well. Jeremy Whittle, Matt Rendell, yourself,
Rob Hales,
Lucy Martin.
Lucy has done all the World Tour races. So there's a nice range of writers there. Now, another subjective kind of thing is I don't know if you want to come straight onto that, but stripped results.
Yeah. So. Let's not beat around the bush. There's a problem with cycling, and a lot of race results have been stripped over the years. So this is the Tour de France results by year, and I needed to make a decision about what to do with guys like Lance Armstrong. And I don't know whether people have noticed, but I certainly noticed that immediately after he got stripped of his results in early 2013, maybe late 2012, around that time, even in the official Tour de France program, they went with no winner. Fair enough, he was stripped, no winner. But just in the last couple of years, he started to creep back in as Lance Armstrong with an asterisk. That's what I decided to go for. Not everybody will agree, but I do kind of, I do think that there is a certain recency bias for people like us when it comes to these things, like particularly maybe you, because I mean you started off, your first tour was 2003, you were very much there when he was lying to your face, and there's a certain personal aspect to that, and it wasn't as personal for me, I wasn't there, but I was watching those races, so I remember them, and I feel a little bit wronged that, he cheated, but there's a whole bunch of teenagers now who, for them, Lance Armstrong is just a guy who won the Tour a few years ago. Oh, did he cheated? All right, well, so did a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so I'm not surprised that he's kind of creeping back in to the official results. And I know it's a kind of maybe a hot topic at the moment, as Bradley Wiggins has said a couple of things about him being iconic recently. But I think L. Armstrong with a star seems about right for me.
There's no right and wrong on this, is it? So but between us, we've obviously messaged each other about how to frame this, and we've reached a kind of an acceptable compromise, I suppose, which is kind of the best you can do in cycling, and then it's open to our kind of educated readership to form their own judgment and agree or disagree, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly, and they'll do that, I'm sure.
Well, it is notable that 2010, Andy Schleck apparently won the Tour de France.
Well, that's officially the way it happened. Andy Schleck was awarded a yellow jersey, whereas, in 2005, Ivan Basso just came up to say he wasn't awarded a yellow jersey for that. So this is the way it kind of happened, which is very unsatisfactory for nerds like myself, where you have to deal with these kind of strange idiosyncrasies that have come from the history of a sport such as this. But such as it is.
So there's a whole bunch of other stuff in this book, all 950 pages, that isn't race results.
Yeah.
And here's probably where you had the most fun, because this is something of a speciality for you, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, it is. Yeah, I think that's. I mean, you were very kind in your words when I came onto the stage, but this is where this kind of love of stats started for me. Do you know? And actually, I would blame Chris Boardman.
I would
You
too.
can blame Chris Boardman for a lot of things. You can blame him.
I'll just blame him for everything. Yeah.
The way I am too, because I remember one of the first tours I watched was 1994, which is the one that came here, and I just remember something specific about that race, which it struck me and it stayed with me, where it was the first Tour de France that had come to the UK for 20 years, and there was only 2 British riders in the race, and they both wore the yellow jersey that year.
Yep.
I just thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
And that's the type of thing that kind of, I don't know, triggers something in my head that I enjoy that. And then, you know, when you see somebody on Twitter who might say something like, for instance, the Giro last year, Andre Greipel won a stage, and it was the 12th Grand Tour in a row that he had started and won a stage. And I remember seeing that and going, wow, that's actually amazing, 12 in a row. Like, I know that's amazing, and it sounds really impressive, and it is really impressive, but how impressive is it? And nobody else seems to have the time or the will to go away and search for these things, but, you know, who else has done it? Is he the first person to do that? What's the most that's ever been done?
What's the answer? I'm desperate to know the answer now.
Well, it's come surprise, as nobody would be surprised to learn it's Eddie Merckx, who 14 in a row, and I think Bernardino did 13. But Greipel is the next.
Yeah.
And the next under him, I think, was only 10. So he was out and out, 3rd best guy who's ever had this streak in Grand Tours. And yeah, nobody else kind of seems to be stupid enough to go away and look back through 112 years.
That's quite an analog process, isn't it? You've just got to look through the results and figure it out. There's no magic button to hit there, is there necessarily?
Yes, yeah.
Well, oh, there's a cheaty way of doing it as well.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, if you gather the data in the right way, you can figure these out. You can make it easy on myself. But another one that kind of emerged from when I was doing this was having gone away and unpicked all the breakaways from the World Tour. You know, you can do things with that. Then you can say, okay, who was the rider in the most breakaways? And again, it'll probably come as no surprise that it was Thomas de Gendt. He's a maniac for these things.
But it's not even close, isn't it? It's just amazing.
And if you go back to the previous slide, I don't know if you can see, you can't really see, but the bottom team is Team Sunweb, who only managed to place a rider in a breakaway 21 times. So Thomas de Gendt was in a breakaway more times than the entire team.
Sunweb.
And, you know, just these little things just emerge. And even the bottom 2 teams from the previous one is Team Sunweb and Team Sky. And even that makes sense because they've got Tom Dumoulin and Chris Froome and Geraint Thomas, so they don't want to put riders in the breakaways. So just these little kind of tidbits emerge. And yeah, that is kind of sadly for my wife and family what gets me excited.
So, in other words, peppered throughout the results, which run chronologically month by month through the calendar in the book, which I hope is still circulating somewhere and no one's run away with it. Circulating, you know, periodically, we've got these kind of sections where you've just gone, here's a subject, and you've kind of brought it to life in infographics then. On a dozen occasions, or what's the...
Yeah, about a dozen.
Yeah,
there's some interesting, hopefully other people might find it interesting, references to kind of quirky statistics like this that aren't really Googleable.
Yeah. Now, making sense of a calendar that is absurd.
Yeah, so this is kind of just a sample of the team page that you get, but this is I don't know how well people can see that, but this is the list of wins that Quickstep had.
Amazing.
And it just, just staring at this, it just always kind of emerges just how weird the cycling calendar is. I mean, even I kept it chronological so that even when you have Giro d'Italia stage 2, 3, 13, 17, in amongst them is also Tour California and Tour de Fjords, and all of these things are going on at the same time. I think even one day, did the Yates twins win a race on the same day as each other, or maybe it was one day apart?
I think it's Paris-Nice and Tirreno. I think it was one day after another.
There's just races going on everywhere, and like having gone through all of this and gone through the process of picking through every single race, like I've come to the conclusion that there is no part of professional cycling that if you were to sit down and design from scratch today, you'd do it the way it is. And it's bonkers. the structure of teams and races and the calendar. But because of that, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
And it's got those little, just weird, I keep using the word idiosyncrasies, but just these weird quirks that, the likes of the Hammer series are trying to take out of the sport a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know how other people feel about the Hammer series. It's certainly, again, it's a nail in the coffin of the purity of data statisticians of what is a win.
Yeah.
They've kind of
so here's a good. So at one of our meetings, going back a few months for this book, I actually said something to you about quick step floors, and I said all these riders who've won stages, whether it's Hodgie or Gaviria, I like calling him Hodgie, or Alaphilippe or Schachmann, the rest of them, Terpstra, I said, who is the one quick step rider who hasn't won a race yet?
Yeah.
And it happened to be the former world champion Philippe Gilbert, which was quite surprising actually.
Yeah.
But he kind of hadn't he? Because he'd got a victory in the Hammer series. But anyway, shortly after that, he actually got a proper win. Within about an hour, you tweeted it as if it was your stat.
I did. I robbed it unashamedly, and I didn't. I didn't ask you or anything. No, I took it.
No.
That's, yeah.
No, but it's brilliant. So are you a bit like me in that you don't want that to change? Because there's, the likes of the UCI periodically, and then people like Jonathan Vaughters try and kind of like revamp it and package it as something that is a bit more coherent. Whereas I think if you get cycling, you understand its vagaries and you kind of celebrate them.
Yeah, it's complicated. I understand the point. Somebody like Jonathan Vaughters' point of view, and he wants stability for his riders. And at the end of the day, they're the ones trying to make money out of this sport and earn a wage. And in order to do that, they need stability, and they feel the need that they have to have this coherent series of races. Always that word, coherent, and a season-long narrative and all of that.
Yeah.
But it is possible to get your fingernails into it and figure it out. It's not straightforward. It's not easy. But I do find that if you ask, everybody is willing to tell you, to say, oh yeah, the Tour de France is on at the same time as the Tour of Austria. Why? I don't know, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Come on in, and there is that aspect to it. So I would be a kind of a Luddite or whatever when it comes to that sort of stuff. I like it the way it is. I understand why they want to kind of maybe formalize it a little bit more, but it certainly takes away from the history and the weirdness of it all.
Completely correct. And it's cycling, isn't it? It's not badminton, and it's not squash, it's not golf. So it's, to read into one person's participation in a race will only tell you so much of a story. You can look at riders' achievements over an entire year or through years, and you'll look at him, and every single race he finishes somewhere between 88th and 152nd. Well, that's for a reason, that he's not the 153rd best rider in the world. He might be one of the very best, but he has a job to do.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, so anyway, I'm rambling on.
Yeah.
But you can't make it coherent. It doesn't work like, it's not Formula One. It's a different thing. And because of the very physics of pushing still air to one side.
Yes.
That defines everything, and everything else flows from that.
Yeah.
It's kind of as complex as that, in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's elements of just staring at results aren't going to tell that story.
Yeah.
And of course, we know that we're not Egypts. We know that exactly that. You can't stare at somebody's results and know what you can guess at what their job was in the race. But I just have one example here which struck me. It's chopped off at the bottom of the page. This is what they call the demo effect. It's gone wrong, but at the bottom there,
Peter Vakoc.
Peter Vakoc, yeah. His UCI ranking in the book is NA.
I can see it just the bottom.
And when I came to kind of proofing it, I had to proof it as well, I got to Peter Vakoc and I thought, NA.
He's a properly good rider.
Why does he not have a UCI ranking? So, I Googled it. Everybody, when they're going to go through this book, is going to have a phone in their pocket. I was no different. So I took my phone out and like, Peter Vakoc, what did he do? Completely forgotten. He'd effectively broken his back training in last January. So he didn't race at all, not once in the year. So, the UCI ranking is a rolling yearly thing. So by the time it came around to October, when I was looking at this,
He was hit by a truck in South Africa, wasn't he, when they were training out there? So
he's he's in the news recently as he's kind of getting back on his feet a little bit, and he's hoping to start racing. But just that little thing, you stare at this book and it tweaks off something, and then if you end up going down a rabbit hole on Google or whatever, so be it, and that's great. But hopefully this book will make a nice starting point to trigger all these things in people.
So, I mean, you know, as I think Cillian's amply demonstrated, I wasn't exaggerating, Cillian is the only person on planet Earth who could have genuinely made this book possible. My contribution is very much kind of like coming along and doing the cherry on the top of the thing. I am notionally, and it's a laughable job title really, because I haven't really made the book at all, but with mine, I'm the editor, and all that means is I've had the wonderful privilege of writing the introduction and a review in broad brushstroke terms of the things I've enjoyed and celebrated in 2018. But also I've been able to commission half a dozen bits of writing, as well as the kind of race report section and things that we've already touched on. We've got some longer form essays and I wanted to look slightly further afield than some of the conventional voices that we often hear in books and anthologies and in print. So I've kind of spread the net a little bit wider. So the people I have commissioned to write various long pieces include, what's this one? A writer who I have been reading for 25 years, if not more, in fact, and it stems back to my previous interest in football, would you believe. Harry Pearson is a journalist who's written for When Saturday Comes, the greatest football fanzine that ever existed. He's hilarious and really well-informed, and to my absolute delight, because I didn't realize this at all, he's a passionate and very, very well-informed cycling fan as well. And so he's written a piece, which is brilliant, about something that you and I have discussed between ourselves, and I think many of you might have opinions on as well. Why is Nicky Terpstra so disliked? Particularly in Flanders, where he happens to, well, he won the Tour of Flanders this year. So Harry's written a wonderful piece about the kind of like the dichotomy between being Dutch and Flemish, and what it is about Terpstra's style of racing that the Flemish don't like. He's done it with great kind of knowledge and humour and all that sort of thing. Equally, I've thrown in a hand grenade and commissioned, and he's in the room somewhere here. If you read Rouleur magazine, which I'm sure you will do, the wonderful and explosive Morten Okbo, the Danish rider, who I'm sure you will recognise from his Rouleur columns, and I asked him to kind of vent on the subject of what do foreigners really think about the British, especially because they win every Grand Tour that they rock up and race. And Morten has not held back, but he's reached some very surprising and beautiful conclusions. Equally, Tom Southam, who is now making a real name for himself and risen through the ranks of EF, whatever the hell they're called, EF, very fast. He's becoming their go-to director sportif now, and probably the most important man in the team car. Tom's written a very interesting take on what it is about modern racing that he doesn't like, and that's really worth reading. I'm going to forget one soon, aren't I? Worthy of note, this is quite interesting actually, I contacted back in the spring Marianne Vos, and I said to Marianne, it's quite a difficult conversation actually, I kind of said to her, I explained the book and I said, I want you to be one of our first contributors, and I would like you to write a little bit about how it is when you realize that your powers are beginning to wane. I didn't quite express it like that, but I kind of said, your transition from being undisputably the out-and-out leader in every race you ever pinned a number on and competed in, to quite often riding in support of other riders for a lesser team. How's that been to cope with? And Mariana totally brought into that idea and said, I'll pay it some attention and think about it. And then a few months later, she started smashing to bits every single race that she ever entered. And she's come flying back to form, which is an absolute delight, I think, for everybody to witness. So Mariana's essay has actually turned out to be very different from the one we envisaged. But for that, it's very refreshing. And she's written it in conjunction with The Guardian's northern correspondent, Helen Pidd, who loves her cycling as well. What have I forgotten? Pippa? Chad, the Giro d'Italia. Chad Hager, who's, by the way, a virtuoso concert standard pianist, amongst being one of the best mountain domestiques in the business, bar none. Chad Hager, the young American, has written a diary of what it was like to try and support Tom Dumoulin in the face of the onslaught from Team Sky and try and support the defending champion to win the Giro d'Italia, which of course he didn't. But that's very interesting, starting off in Israel. So Chad's done a diary for us. Pippa York, who was here talking to me this time last year, has written about leadership and specifically what it means to be a leader of a Grand Tour team and wear the number 1 on your back and what it takes. And she's reflected those views in the mirror of Froome and Thomas, particularly on this year's Tour de France. And my phone's ringing, which is highly unprofessional. And I'll just turn that off. And there's probably one other that I've forgotten. Charlotte. No, that's about it, isn't it? That's about it.
Froome and Thomas themselves.
And Geraint Thomas and Chris Froome. Yeah, they have contributed some exclusive words in the first person, their own thoughts about winning those iconic bike races, the Giro d'Italia and the Tour de France. And some of the stuff they've told us is quite surprising and very fresh to hear. And it's been beautifully illustrated. A lot of attention was paid to the way the book looks and feels. We've used the same team of designers that Rouleur have used, and they've produced, I think, one of the real challenges about this book. We want to be sitting here at the Rouleur Classic in the year 2118, if that's possible. And we want to be reflecting on a book that is, like Wisdom, still being published decades and decades and decades from now and sitting on your bookshelves in a row like that. And to that end, in year one, we had to get the look and the feel of the book absolutely right, because one thing we can't do is next year change it. And I hope that, well, I reiterate, I hope the book that I just passed into the crowd is still somewhere. I hope if you've had a look at it and go and do have a look at the stand and have a touch and feel of it, I think we've nailed that. We've nailed that. I wanted the book to look like one of those school textbooks that we all remember from our school library. You take the dust jacket off, and that's what it looks like. And it's got that kind of almost like timeless feel and quality to it. And the illustrations, I think, and the whole thing knits together. I'm extremely proud of it. This is a very long sales pitch, but I think, but I also hope it's been of interest to you. And the person who just stepped up from the side there, Charlotte Tateo, is the editor of the book, unlike the pretend editor who's sitting here. Charlotte's worked incredibly hard bringing it all together, an impossible timetable, and she's bringing experience from actually 6 or 7 years working at Wisdom. Yeah? So that's the, sorry?
10.
10 years working at Wisdom. So that's the kind of experience that's come to this book. Again, without Charlotte's experience, we wouldn't have been able to make this book. That's it. It is, as of today, on sale. You can buy copies, right, Jonathan? Here, outside, numbered copies. The first 500, remember, this thing's going to be around for 100 years. And you're going to get a numbered first edition that's been initialed as well, if you want to. It is something that you can subscribe to as well, and it'll just arrive in the post every year in time for Christmas. It'll come out this time every year, and I think next year we'll really know what we're doing. But in the meantime, thank you for your close attention. Thank you to my colleagues, Jonathan Marks, Charlotte, and in particular to this guy who's made it all happen, Cillian Kelly, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Nice, Ed. Cheers.
Cheers.